I have 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We have no amendments to the agenda. Look at it. Do we have a motion?
Move to
Move to
approve.
approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
By roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Cool. Public comment. No public comment, no visitors. So consent agenda. Everybody get a chance to read through the minutes on the last meeting. Any questions, comments, concerns? You have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
By roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
Passes.
All right. We have a handful of public hearings, so this is going to be fun. We will go ahead and open first public hearing. I have 7:02, and this is referring to the voters of Aumsville, the prohibition for psilocybin-related business. Ron, you got anything new for us?
No, just for the record, just a little bit of background. As council knows, Measure 109 was approved by statewide voters in 2020, and it set a deadline to bring a prohibition for psilocybin products to voters through each jurisdiction, and that deadline had to occur at the general election. And so because Oregon Health Authority is in charge of this program and they're still working on rules, we won't have another opportunity to bring this before voters until 2024. And so that's why it's kind of been rushed in front of council this evening. It wasn't like we just decided we were going to spring this on people at the last minute, just for the record. And as you know, there's really a lot of unknowns. And the original 2020 initiative 109 wasn't supported by a majority of our voters, but because it was supported by a majority of statewide voters, we still have to bring that back in front of our voters if our voters have decided that they do not wish that to be present in our community. So happy to answer any questions if council has them. Of course, we'll have to close the public hearing at some point to talk about the resolution and ordinance. We would just simply ask that when council gets to that point, the mayor read the ordinance in its entirety. And that's just a timing issue. We're probably okay, but we just want to check all the boxes.
Just to clarify, you want just the ordinance or you want resolution and ordinance in full?
The only thing that we're worried about reading in full is the ordinance.
I'm guessing there's no public comment. So the public hearing portion, we can go ahead and close. I've got 7:05. Council, anybody have anything? The only thing I'll bring up with this is I did contact some of our elected representation just to express the frustration that I think we all experienced, as well as the frustration of some of the other local mayors and councils over the fact that we're being asked to put something nobody knows what that's going to look like. So hopefully something can be done. Timeframes on that kind of stuff. But if nobody has anything, then we continue the decision. So we have resolution number 1022, resolution referring to the voters of Aumsville, a measure proposing the prohibition of psilocybin related business from operating within the city of Aumsville. Do we have motions? Buddy?
To see where Does our recommendations. I don't see them. Well, I move we approve resolution number 1022, a resolution referring to the voters of Aumsville, a measure proposing the prohibition of psilocybin-related business from operating within the city of Aumsville.
Second,
I'll second.
go by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger,
Aye.
motion passes.
All right, so we will move on to the first reading of ordinance 707, an ordinance prohibiting psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products within the city of Aumsville. Whereas in November 2020, Oregon voters approved ballot measure 109, known as the Oregon Psilocybin Service Act, codified at ORS 475A, which allows the manufacture, delivery, and administration of psilocybin at licensed facilities. And whereas ORS 475A.235 provides the Oregon Health Authority will regulate the manufacturing, transportation, delivery, sale, and purchase of all psilocybin products and the provision of psilocybin services in the state. And whereas the OHA has initiated a rule-making process to implement the state's psilocybin regulatory program and intends to begin accepting applications for psilocybin-related service licenses on January 2nd, 2023, and whereas as of July 26, 2022, the OHA has not completed the rulemaking process for implementing the state's psilocybin regulatory program, and the city of Aumsville is uncertain how the manufacture, delivery, and administration of psilocybin at licensed psilocybin facilities will operate within the city. Whereas ORS 475A.718 provides that a city council may adopt an ordinance to be referred to the electors of the city prohibiting the establishment of state licensed psilocybin product manufacturers and or psilocybin service centers in the areas subject to the jurisdiction of the city. Now therefore, the city of Aumsville ordains as follows. Section 1, prohibition, the establishment of psilocybin product manufacturers licensed under ORS 475A.290 and psilocybin service centers licensed under ORS 475A.305 is prohibited in the city of Aumsville. Section 2, referral. The ordinance is referred to the electors of the city of Aumsville for approval at the next statewide general election on November 8th, 2022. Section 3, effective date. The ordinance takes effect and becomes operative 30 days after the day on which it is approved by the majority of voters. Therefore, presented and passed. Well, we got to vote on it, but that's the whole thing. Do we have a motion?
Before you get to the motion, may I make a point of order?
Yes, Ron.
Okay. So just to go over council's rules, remember this is, we're trying to rush this in order to meet a deadline, and there's some things that have to occur before it actually gets submitted. So under our city charter, if the first reading, either by title only or in its entirety, does not receive a unanimous vote, we'll have to schedule a special meeting 3 days from now in order to bring this back in front of the council. The second reading does not need to receive a unanimous vote. So if we do the first reading and it's unanimous, we can do a second reading by title only. Doesn't have to be unanimous. That will decide the action. If we do the first reading and it's not unanimous, we have to go to a second reading at another date, no matter what. So that's the way with all of our ordinances. Typically, ordinances are not controversial or as controversial as these may be. But I just wanted council to know, even though the ordinance may ultimately pass, it will not pass tonight unless at least the first reading receives a unanimous vote. So if somebody doesn't want to support it, just from a logistic standpoint, the second reading would be your protest vote. Or, I mean, you could protest all of them. We'll just be back on Thursday.
All righty then. We got a motion?
I move to approve the first reading of ordinance number 707, an ordinance prohibiting psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products within the city of Aumsville.
Second.
By roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger,
Aye.
motion passes.
So we'll just jump into the second reading by title only. So this is second reading. Ordinance number 7, ordinance prohibiting psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products within the city of Aumsville.
I move to approve the second reading of ordinance number 707 and ordinance prohibiting psilocybin service centers and the manufacture of psilocybin products within the city of Aumsville.
I'll second.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger,
Aye.
motion passes.
Okay. Moving on. So we have another hearing. We will go ahead and, well, this is to refer to the voters for marijuana facilities. So currently we have the moratorium. This is to send it back and see if the voters want to lift that or not. We'll open the hearing. I have 7:12. Ron, any new information for us on this one?
No, but just for the record, again, one of the discussions when we're discussing the psilocybin issue is should we also refer the issue of marijuana back to the voters? In this particular case, I'm not really in love with the wording of the measure, but this was the wording that was recommended by our city attorney, because just to ban psilocybin, you would vote yes. To maintain a ban on marijuana, you would vote no. So the question is, do we lift the ban? And so, hopefully there's groups that are out there on both sides of this issue that will communicate that to voters, and that they'll need to really look at these ballot measures to understand, because if they vote yes, 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 they're not necessarily voting for straight ban on these types of products. But because there was a ban in place, it was difficult to word it. You don't want to word it in a double negative, I guess, is the way that they explained it to me. So I just wanted you to know that the way that this is worded, they would actually vote no, because this is worded to lift the ban. And so other than that, this just refers it back to voters. We included all marijuana products and facilities because we have to include all of them if the city wants to levy a tax. And with limited information from council, that's the direction we went. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
So to levy the tax, we vote yay to allow the votes to the voters, right?
Well, we're gonna have two, Scott. So this one is to put it on the ballot to let the voters decide whether we lift the current ban or not. And then the next action item has to do with the tax specifically.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
Anybody else got anything? Public comment? We will go ahead and close the public hearing. I have 7:14. Council, anybody got anything?
No.
All right, well, we will move to the first item, is resolution number 1122, resolution referring to the voters of Aumsville, a measure to allow medical marijuana dispensaries, marijuana retailers, medical marijuana processing sites, marijuana producers, marijuana processors, and marijuana wholesalers. Nobody?
I'll move to approve resolution number 11-22, resolution referring to the voters of Aumsville, a measure to allow medical marijuana dispensaries, marijuana retailers, medical marijuana processing sites, marijuana producers, marijuana processors, and marijuana wholesalers.
Seconded.
Vote by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, so we'll do the same thing with the last one. We'll do the first reading in full. So this is the first reading of ordinance 708, an ordinance of the city of Aumsville repealing a ban on medical marijuana dispensaries, marijuana retailers, marijuana processing sites, marijuana producers, marijuana processors, and marijuana wholesalers. Whereas Aumsville voters approved a ban on medical marijuana processing sites, medical marijuana dispensaries, marijuana producers, marijuana processors, marijuana wholesalers, and marijuana retailers on November 8th, 2016, as set forth in ordinance 644. Whereas as prescribed in ORS 475C.457, city council may adopt an ordinance to allow the establishment of marijuana-related business in the city, repeal previously adopted bans, and may submit this ordinance to the voters of the city. And whereas the city council desires to submit to the voters the question of whether to repeal ordinance 644 and replace it with this ordinance to allow medical marijuana dispensaries, marijuana retailers, medical marijuana processing sites, marijuana producers, marijuana processors, and marijuana wholesalers who operate in the city. Now therefore the city of Aumsville ordains as follows. Section 1, definitions. For the purposes of the ordinance, all terms used herein shall have the same definition set forth under ORS 475C.009. For this ordinance is referred to the voters of the city of Aumsville for approval at the next statewide general election, November 8th, 2022. Section 3, effective date. This ordinance takes effect and becomes operative 30 days after the day on which it is approved by the majority of voters. Therefore presented.
I move the second reading of resolution.
First reading.
First reading of resolution number 11-22, a resolution referring to the,
We just did that one.
okay, so I'm doing
That's the
the
one.
You need B.
B, sorry, guys. I move first reading of ordinance 708 in accordance with the city of Aumsville repealing a ban on medical marijuana dispensaries, marijuana retailers, marijuana processing sites, marijuana producers, marijuana processors, and marijuana wholesalers.
Seconded.
By roll call.
Counselor Casares.
Aye.
Counselor Seha.
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone.
Aye.
Counselor Lee.
Aye.
Counselor Sini.
Aye.
Counselor Wick.
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Right, we will move into the second reading of ordinance 708 by title only, an ordinance of the city of Aumsville repealing a ban on medical marijuana dispensaries, marijuana retailers, marijuana processing sites, marijuana producers, marijuana processors, and marijuana wholesalers. We have a motion.
Move to approve the second reading of ordinance number 708, an ordinance of the city of Aumsville replacing a ban on medical marijuana dispensaries, marijuana retailers, marijuana processing sites, marijuana producers, marijuana processors, and marijuana wholesalers as presented.
Have a second.
I'll
I'll
second it.
second.
Vote by roll call.
Counselor Casares.
Aye.
Counselor Seha.
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone.
Aye.
Counselor Lee.
Aye.
Counselor Sini.
Aye.
Counselor Wick.
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to the next one. So this is a public hearing referring to the voters of Aumsville, the question of imposing a tax on the sale of marijuana items by marijuana retailers. We'll go ahead and open this hearing. I have 7:20. Ron, anything new for us?
Yeah, and this is just, we have to do this in conjunction with the marijuana retail if we would like to collect or have an option to collect tax on the sale of those products. And by law, we can only collect up to a maximum of 3% tax, and it also has to be voted by voters in order for the city to be able to levy that. And so that's why we have this adjoining ordinance before you today. I don't know if there's any other information I can provide. I'm happy to try to answer this.
Did we confirm that 3% is still the number? I know there was a couple of bills that were floated previously that would allow cities to increase that. I think it was up to like 5% or something like that.
I don't think those bills have passed
Okay.
because my consultation with the city attorney was 3%.
I knew they were out there. I just wasn't sure what happened with them, but okay. If 3% is what we're at, then 3% is what we're at. Did they die? Okay. All righty then. Well, I'm guessing we have no public comments. 7:21, we'll close the public hearing portion. Council, does anybody have anything?
No.
All right, well then we will move on to the first item, resolution number 1222, a resolution approving referral to the voters of the city of Aumsville, the question of imposing a tax on the sale of marijuana items by marijuana retailers within the city. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 1222, a resolution approving referral to the voters of the city of Aumsville, the question of imposing a tax on the sale of marijuana items by marijuana retailers within the city as presented.
I'll second.
Go by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger,
Aye.
motion passes.
All right, with the ordinance, we'll do the same thing. We'll read the entire one for the first reading. So this is the first reading of ordinance number 709, an ordinance imposing a tax on the sale of marijuana items by marijuana retailers. Whereas under ORS 475C.453, the city may impose up to a 3% tax or fee on the sale of marijuana items by a marijuana retailer in the area subject to the jurisdiction of the city if a tax is approved by the voters of the city. Whereas the city council has referred ordinance 708 to the voters for the November 8th, 2022 election, which if passed would allow for the operation of marijuana retailers in the city. And whereas consistent with the ORS 475C.453, in the event ordinance 708 as approved by the voters, the city council wishes to impose a 3% tax on the sale of marijuana items by a marijuana retailer in the city if such marijuana facilities are established in the city. Now, therefore, the city of Aumsville ordains as follows. Section 1 definitions, marijuana item has the meaning given that term in ORS 475C.009, marijuana retailer, person who holds a license under ORS 475C.097 and sells marijuana items to consume in the state. Retail sale price, the price paid for marijuana item excluding tax to a marijuana retailer by or on behalf of the consumer of the marijuana item. Section 2, tax imposed as authorized by ORS 475C.453, the city of Aumsville hereby imposes a tax on the retail sale price of all marijuana items sold by the marijuana retailer in the city in an amount equal to the maximum allowed by state law. Section 3, collection, the tax shall be collected at the point of sale at the point of sale of a marijuana item by a marijuana retailer, the time at which the retail sale occurs, and remitted by each marijuana retailer that engages in the retail sale of marijuana items. If approved by voters, the council shall take all actions necessary to implement the tax. Section 4, referral, this ordinance is referred to the voters of the city of Aumsville for approval at the next statewide general election, Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. 65, the sections, subsections, paragraphs, and clauses of this ordinance are severable. The invalidity of one section, subsection, paragraphs, or clauses is not effective validity of the remaining sections, subsections, or paragraphs, or clauses. Section 6, effective date, the ordinance shall be effective only in the event it, along with ordinance 708, is approved by the voters of the city of Aumsville and will become effective on the same date ordinance 708 becomes effective. Therefore presented.
I move to approve first reading of ordinance number 709, an ordinance imposing a tax on the sale of marijuana items by marijuana retailers.
Seconded.
Go by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger,
Aye.
motion passes.
All right, and we will move into the second reading by title only of ordinance 709, an ordinance imposing a tax on the sale of marijuana items by marijuana retailers.
I move to approve the second reading of ordinance number 709, an ordinance imposing a tax on the sale of marijuana items by marijuana retailers as presented.
Second,
I'll second.
roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger,
Aye.
motion passes.
That's 3 resolutions and 3 ordinances. 6 minutes. Golf clap. All right, so we have no old business. New business, West Tech Engineering System Integrator of Record Procurement Services Proposal, Job Order 2599.0000.0. Ron, take it away.
I won't go too deep into this, but basically if we name an integrator of record, then we can go out for and accept proposals, select one through our engineering company. And then as we're doing a lot of these capital projects, what the idea is that all of our electronic monitoring systems will be housed with one vendor. And that way we can communicate easier across different utilities. And so I can go into it deeper than that, but the report's there. It's not to exceed $18,000 to get somebody on board to do this work for us. And with both a new potable water system, reservoir and monitoring system coming online, our emergency generator project, which is, I think it's either complete or near complete. And then our wastewater facility, it's probably a good action for us to take at this time. Happy to answer any questions.
Have anything?
Would that affect our current contracts that we have and putting them all under one?
Well, that would be the idea. I think our current contracts are somewhat, the equipment is somewhat obsolete. So I don't think we have a regular vendor. I think we have contractors that we use to keep,
Keep it running.
the thing talking back and forth. But this is something that we've been looking to do. But now that we're moving into these capital facilities projects, it's probably a good timely thing to bring forward.
Anybody got a motion?
I move to approve the West Tech Engineering System Integrator of Record
Proposal with the not to exceed the amount of $18,000 from funds 12-620 50% and fund 13-620 50% as presented by staff.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger,
Aye.
motion passes.
Moving on. Ron, your report, sir.
Okay, so you have our public works report in your packet. I didn't see anything in there that jumped out at me except for just know that our staff is extremely busy with all of the things that we have to do. And then we have a breakdown or something like that on top of it. It's just extra. Plus, of course, we've been dealing with everything else related to sicknesses and vacations and all that good stuff. So just know that. I think the police department report came a little late. Did that get out to council? That's in the packet, but we did get that. Happy to answer any questions on those. For me, I just have a couple small bullet items. Okay, I'll continue. The council received a legislative priority list from LOC. And typically, we haven't done this the last couple of years, I think just because everybody got off track with COVID. But typically what we would do is we would send a list of our legislative priorities. And I don't know if council has anything specific that jumps out at you. If not, I've outlined 5 of their priorities that I think are priorities. I think they're long shots and who knows if there'll be work done on them, but we could certainly send our opinion on things that are local to us. But I wanted to find out if council had any specific priorities that are on this list. Okay, do you want to hear the 5 that I outlined? Protecting, full funding in alignment with state land use initiatives. That's those unfunded mandates that we're getting a lot of those, and then we're trying to figure out how do we fund those. And I think LOC has a proposal to support legislation to streamline and fully fund local implementation of recently adopted. So these are things that may have already been adopted or could be adopted. I think that's a good thing. There's a LOC does have an introduced legislation to protect the personal contact information of public employees. Apparently there's lots of litigation that's going on, and typically when you're litigated as a public employee, it comes through the city. But there's kind of a lot of stuff that happens where people get personal contact information through litigation, and that they're trying to protect that. I think that's probably a good idea out of the priority. Property tax reform, I think we've talked about that many, many times in the state. I think a lot of people know we're headed there at some point. It's just we haven't got there. I think it's good, if for no other reason, that we just continue to look at that or bring that up as an issue. And then I had, there's a big list here. There's a lot of things that, are important, but if I'm picking 5, infrastructure, financing, and resilience. Again, in our current situation, I think that's a good priority. And then the water utility rate funding assistance program, which is currently in place, but I think they want to make sure that they continue to secure that. And considering where we may end up going with utility rates as more and more mandates get put on the city, or more and more improvements are required, I really think having some sort of a state program that helps out with our lower income populations is really important. So if I had to pick 5, that's the 5 I'd pick. If you guys are supportive of those, I'm happy to send that along on behalf of the city. If not, you're welcome to email me your priorities, or you can tell me tonight and we'll work those in and get those sent off.
Yeah, I mean, I read through them and there wasn't anything that I absolutely wouldn't support, so.
Yeah.
About the infrastructure funding, I think is probably one of the more important ones on there in terms of working with medium and small municipalities and to get projects taken care of. I think that's kind of a biggie, honestly.
I just wonder if LOC's push for greater infrastructure funding is going to be an item that's kind of dead on arrival with all of the infrastructure packages that we're seeing currently. If it's just going to be pointless, but I agree that it needs to be a priority. So I'm not opposed to them putting their weight behind it.
Well, infrastructure funding has been a conversation pre-ARPA, pre-COVID and all these other things. So it's still one of those things that I think cities need based on where our needs are. I mean, we're not the only city that has needs. Every single city has needs, and those needs are insurmountable compared to what resources they have available. And there are other models for Oregon to use. There's, shared state income tax revenues that could go and help fund like a public works trust fund or something of that nature. And there's lots of different programs out there. So I think it's worth saying it's still a need. And as I look through the list, that's why I threw it on there.
Oh, anything else, Ron?
No, just Corn Festival volunteers. If you know anybody, if you have a significant other that you want to obligate to a day of hard labor, this is your chance, because our Corn Festival event is both August 19th, Party in the Park, and August 20th, which is where we need the labor at for that event. I have been in constant communication with our corn grower. He's very excited that even though corn got planted late, he sees it coming in as normal, and it should be great again this year. And so we've got volunteers lined up, but we need more. We need as many volunteers as we can get. So let us know, please, if you plan on showing up, just so that we know that you do plan on taking a shift. And if you have children and they're able-bodied and
Are you encouraging child labor?
I'm encouraging anybody who wants to volunteer to come to the Corn Festival.
I'll tell you what, last year I had my oldest there and she keeps talking about it because she sees the banner
Yeah.
and she keeps bringing it up because she got to volunteer a little
shucking
bit and she
corn.
was shucking corn
She
with
was
me and
shucking
she was
corn.
like, I want to go
Yeah.
back there and do it. It was so fun. So, I mean, yeah.
As always, for Party at the Park, I volunteer to do my utmost to increase
Sales.
the amount of money that we earn by consuming as much beer as I can responsibly do.
All right, well, I just had to get the plug in for Corn Festival. I think our planning, we plan every day. I think our planning is right on track. Our expenses are down this year a little bit, we think, because we bought a lot of capital things last year. Of course, our donations are down just because we really didn't have staff to chase as many sponsors, but I think we're gonna have a really good year and I'm looking forward to it.
I tried, Ron. I tried.
Yeah, Angie tried. Boy, I sent her off on sponsors and she just pounded the pavement and she did get some and she did a good job. So, and we just picked one up the other day out of the blue. So we are getting them. It's just not quite at the level of last year, but that's okay. I think, we'll do fine. It'll be a great little fundraiser for those service groups that are participating. And unless you have questions for me, I think we're good.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Reports and initiatives. Council, anybody got anything?
Yep. We had our MWAC meeting last Thursday and we had a presentation on the tolling that's coming to I-5 and I-205, probably by 24. And they presented a nice thick draft of options to establish toll benefits for drivers experiencing low incomes, which is considered between 200% and 400% of the federal poverty level. So if anyone's interested in that, I have a lovely report you can read. And they also just talked about the Federal Lands Access Program, helping cities and counties get access to federal lands. So if you're in an area that has those, they have some grants and things available. And the Great Streets Program, which is a 50 million flexible funding, which will be used for walking, biking, crossing, bus shelters and trees in communities that have main streets that are part of the public state system for transportation.
Cool. Anybody else?
I just want to chime in and thank our police department as well as families and folks that stepped up to volunteer and host National Night Out. We in some neighborhoods we had smaller numbers, and others we had solid turnout. And just want to thank everybody who helped put that together and make it a success. I really enjoyed being a part of it, and yeah, it was awesome. And the only thing I would probably suggest to staff is if maybe they could get the word out a little bit sooner next year about it. I know we had a couple of citizens that kind of last minute, thankfully, had heard about it, but if they hadn't seen the commotion going on across the street from maybe one of the houses, they may have not actually attended. So if we could maybe get it out a little bit earlier next year, I think that'd be awesome. But other than that, it went well. Thank you for all involved.
I was one of the hosting sites on that, and the turnout was pretty great. I can't speak for the entire council, but Mike and Katrina Adams coming out with the food truck and parking it in my driveway, it was pretty awesome. I know a lot of people in the community really appreciated that, so big thanks to them. My schedule has changed immensely, so I'm going to be gone a lot the next couple months. But I think at the last meeting, I was only supposed to be gone for a week. Now I will be in Indonesia until the 17th of September. I believe we have a meeting on the 12th, so I'll be calling into that one. And then in October, I will be in Ethiopia, and then I will be in the Central African Republic. One meeting I'll have to call in on the 24th. What is that? 24th of October. But then I should be home for
Speaking of, I'm going off to SLC next month. I'll be gone from the 6th to the 24th. I will do my best to make sure I attend the meetings.
Yeah, I think the only one we have in there is the 12th, but I mean, I know how SLC goes, so if you can't make it, that's no sweat, Scott.
That's good.
Yeah, then I should be home for the rest of the year, and then you guys won't have to deal with me anymore. So,
Mhm.
but if there is,
Find that hard to believe.
if there's nothing else, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. I have 7:41.